Welcome to ADRRN Dialogues, where we bring you real stories from communities living on the front lines of climate change. Now, across Asia, local organizations are leading bold, practical solutions to the challenges that communities face every day. This series is about their ideas, their experiences, and what the world can learn from them. Today, we're joined by members of YAKKUM Emergency Unit, YEU, Neela, Mia, and Brato, who have been working on building community resilience to disasters and climate crises in areas prone to ground movement and drought in the Yogyakarta Province of Indonesia. Welcome to all of you. So just to start us off, if you could tell us a little bit about the YAKKUM Emergency Unit and what drew you to Banjarasri Village, why this place and why now?
Thank you, Triti, for your questions. YAKKUM Emergency Unit is one unit of the Christian Foundations for Public Health in Bahasa Indonesia. So our core mandate is in disaster management, emergency response, DRR or disaster risk reductions, preparedness, and also climate change adaptations. So why I choose Banjarasri is because it is in line with our mandates. Banjarasri located in the slope, in the hills on the west part of our province, Yogyakarta. And Banjarasri is very prone to landslide and ground movement. The steep terrain makes the community prone to landslide, and it is exacerbated with climate challenges as well. We realized that when we discuss with the community, they need capacity strengthening as well on preparedness, how to deal with landslides, and so on.
Just to build on what you already introduced about the context of Banjarasri, as you said, landslides and droughts are two very different kinds of risks that affect this region. Can you walk us through what a year actually looks like for a family in this village, dealing with both of these hazards and how these two hazards weave through their calendar and their livelihoods?
Actually, that is from the PACDR or Participatory Action Climate Disaster Research. The findings of the workshop, the men's group tend to focus the seasonal pattern in the village, like planting schedule and times when the slides typically occur or the drought typically occur. But what makes different with the women's groups, they give rich information, map like cultural event calendars, and also the season when illness tends to spike, and also the new year when the children return to school, current year, and also the dry season hasn't lasted long as it used to. Like in previous years, it's could stretch. The agriculturers in the lowlands are very well served, drawing water from rivers. And in Banjarasri, they have big river and also the canal we call here is Selokan Mataram or Mataram Canal. We call the irrigation. The irrigation will fulfill the needs to for the agriculture there. So much information when they want to mitigate the disaster that occur in their village.
You've talked about the kinds of different knowledge that different groups of people bring into the context here, which is their lived experience, their realities of dealing with these crises on a day-to-day basis throughout the year. Could we talk a little bit about how the traditional knowledge comes together with the kind of scientific knowledge that you are also able to bring into the picture? How do these two things work in tandem?
Actually, their perspective is almost the same. When mapping their risk disaster, there are experts from the academic to do the research in their village, the idea, solution, it's matching together because I can give the example. The RR Forum and also the women farming group mapping the risk disaster, they found when the droughts, they can expand the innovation such as the livestock integrate with food bank for the livestock. Will help the livestock to have their food bank such as the tree. It will help the land because they were in the steep areas, the rural areas. It's very steep and also really dangerous. When the expert explain they were in the dangerous area, like it's a prone area. So the solution blend together with the local community.
Great. Thank you, Neela, for explaining how the local knowledge and the scientific advice actually line up with the lived experience. In your project, you have used design thinking workshops. Could you just talk us through what actually happens in one of these sessions?
Sebenarnya waktu workshop design thinking itu bagaimana komunitas itu diajak untuk melakukan kerangka berpikir untuk merancang aksi-aksi dalam memunculkan sebuah inovasi yang ada di bayangannya untuk menciptakan sebuah inovasi sehingga dengan model-model pengembangan dengan sumber daya lokal komunitas itu bisa melakukan aksi-aksi penanggulangan bencana.
During the workshop, the participants also divided by the small group. We introduce them to do the empathy maps. They will explore what people say, think, and feel when the disaster strikes, whether it's for a drought or a landslide. That community was also facilitated to build the problem tree that is helping them to dig deeper the root issue. It is really satisfying for them because they can find the idea for the innovation. It's from themselves.
Okay, that's very interesting. In some sense, it could be understood that it is more difficult than prescribing solutions as an organization to step in and say that, this is what you could do. But you have taken the harder but participatory route to allow these communities to strategically identify and evaluate their own circumstances. So what was this like for the communities? How did you see them adapting to this learning process, to this method of thinking and understanding? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Later, Broto can add, but if we started, like Nila mentions, with design thinking, in which they are exploring the root causes, and then they will try to find the solutions that are fit into their local context and capacity. At first, they submitted like 4 proposals for the innovations. Then we discussed together, and they came up with 2. One is developed by the ADRRN Village Forum. The second innovations is with the women farmer group. These innovations can really solve the issues of landslides and climate. For example, when the innovations is raising the good by the women farmer group, it is also integrated to solve the problems of soil degradations and the risk of the landslide in the steep area. So when they raise the goat, they also plant the feed grass to feed the goat, for example. But the roots of the grass, it is to strengthen the soil on the steep location, for example. So it is an integrations between the DRR and also economic activity. So we approve these initiatives, and which is now they are currently implementing.
I think our listeners would also be curious to know how you arrived at these 2 specific ideas that came up from the communities. What was it that led to this?
Mereka kan berdiskusi terus ada beberapa ide dan relevan dengan untuk menanggulangi atau menyelesaikan persoalan itu. Dari satu inovasi itu bisa menanggulangi 2 ancaman. Jadi ternak kambing itu kan ketika kekeringan itu berkurang pendapatan. Itu muncul inovasi itu karena ada identifikasi 2 ancaman, longsor dan kekeringan. Kelompok atau KWB Mudirjeki itu saling berdiskusi kira-kira di satu inovasi tapi bisa menyelesaikan dua ancaman sekaligus. Intinya dengan kambing itu teman-teman itu bisa mengasumsikan bisa digunakan untuk peningkatan pendapatan ketika musim kemarau, tetapi ketika musim hujan, teman dalam mengintegrasikan ternak kambing dengan menanam lumbung pakan itu bisa digunakan sekaligus untuk penanggulangan longsor. Jadi teman itu terinisiasi ternak kambing untuk peningkatan ekonomi, aman atau lumbung pakan dengan pohon-pohon karang itu tujuannya untuk penanggulangan longsor sekaligus untuk memberi pakan kepada.
So aside from the design thinking workshop, we also conducted the participatory assessment on disaster and climate risk workshop, in which they will map the risk, the historical events of landslides and then ground movements, and then they also mentions about drought and rains with winds, and that also destroyed the plants and roofs. So these ideas are then gathered, and they also use the empathy map during the design thinking, and they position themselves as a team, as a community with capacity. During our reflective workshop, they mentions that before they did not know what to do, they just reactively. But after we collaborate in these projects together with both groups, the DRR forum and also the women groups, they feels that now they know what to do. At least they now know what to be prepared. So not only in the perspective of DRR, but also they can gain some economic value from the initiative, because they need also to maintain the innovations. It's not one-time activity and stop, but they want to also be able to continue in the long run. The second thing that also motivate them is that the women farmer groups and also the local community is majority farmers. They realize that during the past decades, they use too much chemical fertilizers, particularly in the slope on the steep areas. The lands are very dry in the dry seasons, not only because of the climate or the weather, but because also the chemical substances. So the goat raising, they use the goat waste to also support the initiative of organic fertilizers and also biopesticides. This one activity, it can support the DRR and but also to restore the soil, because they will apply the organic fertilizer from the goat waste to restore the soil conditions, and hopefully it will strengthen, not to make the land too dry.
Absolutely. It's piecing together many different aspects of the community's lives, the landscape, the ecology, their knowledge, and the scientific method to bring it together into a very robust and resilient approach to dealing with disaster risk and management. So thank you. Just to build on that a little bit, you've already talked about some of these, but what are some of the small changes that you might have been able to bring in through this project that could potentially make a big difference in the lives of these communities?
Ya, kecil pertama, komunitas itu mulai sadar bahwa ancaman yang ada itu perlu ditangani bersama. Artinya semua komunitas yang ada itu memiliki tanggung jawab untuk menanggulanginya. Ini yang pertama. Yang kedua, mereka juga sadar apa yang dilakukan itu ternyata juga memicu terjadinya ancaman yang ada di sana. Salah satunya dengan penggunaan pupuk kimia yang berlebihan, penebangan pohon yang tidak tebang pilih. Sehingga mereka punya, dengan kesadaran itu mereka juga sadar bahwa itu perlu dibenahi bersama, sehingga mereka memiliki kegiatan yang saat ini dilakukan, baik membuat pupuk organik, tanaman pakan yang dengan pohon lebih keras, sehingga nanti selain untuk penanggulangan longsor, daun itu juga sama. Maka sebenarnya ada semangat yang muncul ketika mereka kita ajak untuk mengidentifikasi persoalan-persoalan yang ada, dan ternyata itu sangat penting dan segera untuk dilakukan penanggulangan, sehingga memunculkan ide-ide atau gagasan yang sangat menarik bagi saya. Mereka itu memiliki melakukan aktivitas-aktivitas yang sebenarnya di luar apa yang saya pikirkan sebagai pendamping, terutama ketika mereka sadar perlu mengajukan proposal ke pihak-pihak terkait supaya mendorong atau membantu aktivitas yang dilakukan teman-teman di sana. Salah satunya membuat proposal ke DAS, itu adalah salah satu kantor atau lembaga yang konsen terhadap aliran sungai di wilayah mereka. Tujuannya supaya lembaga atau kantor tersebut mendukung aktivitas yang dilakukan teman-teman, terutama bibit akar wangi untuk ditanam untuk menanggulangi longsor, dan itu berhasil. Ini yang menurut saya perubahan yang awalnya tidak saya sadari, tapi mereka sudah memunculkan inisiatif sendiri untuk mempercepat proses apa yang dilakukan teman-teman di sana.
And it grows from one initiative to another. It's beyond what we plan. And then from the DRR Village Forum, from the purely preparedness activities, it linked to the other government agencies. They connect with the watershed management agency, in which previously before the project, they don't even have a connections at all. Now they realize, so they are part of the village they are located in the river, near the river bank. That's why they feel that it is also important to coordinate with this agency, because they can regulate the irrigation channel of the rainwater, for example. So the water can goes to the river properly and not triggering further risk to landslide. And other thing is that they also thinking now about protecting the water source of the uphill, for example, how to regulate the loggings or the cutting the trees and not excessively cut the trees and so on. So it's moved not only from only one two activities proposed, but already moved beyond that. I think that's our changes that we see, and it is an important thing to notice that now also stated during our reflective workshop just last week, that if previously they are ignorance, now they are moving with awareness.
That's beautifully put. And this is something that can travel across borders for other communities to also learn from what people around the world are doing to deal with different kinds of climate risks. So, what do you think is one lesson from the Banjarasri village that could travel across borders to other organizations or to different countries to carry into their own community resilience work?
Ya, pembelajarannya yang saya tangkap di sana itu ada kerjasama yang kuat antara pemerintah kelurahan setempat dan masyarakat, sehingga bisa saling mensupport. Biasanya ketika di komunitas itu pemerintah setempatnya itu mau mensupport, itu akan menambah semangat tersendiri bagi komunitas yang ada. Sehingga di sana yang menurut saya menjadi pembelajaran dan bisa direplikasi, bagaimana mendorong pemerintah setempat itu turut terlibat dalam melakukan aksi-aksi kesiapsiagaan bencana. Ini yang terpenting menurut saya. Karena itu menjadi modal awal semangat bagi teman-teman bahwa mereka itu ada dukungan yang sangat luar biasa.
And this fully supported initiatives enabling the community groups to move forward, meaning to say that they have the confidence to link with other government agencies. They have the confidence to implement, and they know that behind them is the legality of the government itself is supporting what they do. And it is quite important in our locations, because they need like permissions, they need to follow some regulations and so on. And it also ensures the long-term sustainability, because by acknowledging the initiative as part of the village programs, meaning it will receive also opportunity to be part of the village budget plan in the coming years, for example. If we are supporting them this year until next, and they can advocate the village government to continue this initiative as part of the village programs, and this will not stop only during the project. So another thing aside from support is also that this initiative is also proposed by the community. So meaning that it is owned by them. When it is owned by them, then they are willing to continue to work on it.
Absolutely. And that is how resilience is built, through propagating the ideas that they come with themselves, the communities. Just one last question for you. What is one story or moment in time from this project that has stayed with you?
Apa penyelesaian secara mandiri, tidak harus menunggu dari pihak-pihak lain. Ada kesadaran yang tumbuh di sana. Menurut saya sangat berkesan.
So the awareness that grows within the community itself is the one that also motivate us to continue to assist them or collaborate with them in this program.
Dan untuk menyelesaikan persoalan itu, komunitas itu tidak kita biarkan untuk melakukan menerka-nerka di mana yang harus dilakukan untuk mitigasinya, tetapi juga kami secara pendamping tergerak untuk bekerja sama dengan pihak akademisi untuk memastikan bahwa hasil itu adalah hasil analisa yang kuat sehingga ketika kita informasikan kepada masyarakat itu ada bukti yang secara akademis bisa dipertanggungjawabkan sehingga itu semakin memperkuat masyarakat kepercayaan masyarakat untuk melakukan mitigasi.
Thank you for sharing your insights. It's wonderful for the network to understand what you're doing and for other communities hopefully listening in and tuning into this podcast from around the world to understand how communities and scientific approach can work together to create long-lasting solutions for disaster resilience across the world. So once again, just thank you for joining us on ADRRN Dialogues and for sharing the story of how YEU is working alongside communities in Banjarasri Village to respond to both drought and landslide risks through locally led solutions. I think this conversation showed us how locally driven ideas, innovations, community participation, partnership, and the combination of both traditional knowledge and the scientific system can come together to establish very robust, everyday resilience practices that are helping communities like this navigate very complex and overlapping challenges through their daily living, through activities that they indulge in and participate in on a daily basis to become more resilient and robust.
Thank you. ADRRN for allowing us to implement the SIDRRA projects. Thank you for having us.